no gold is not enough.
Okay, so we have some designing issues. So alright, I just created the div with the class of card, but this card body is outside, so that's an issue. We need to remove that. We need to cut this from here, and it should be here. So it's like card header, then card body, and UL inside it should be like this. And there is a spelling mistake. You can see that we are saying group misspelled, so we need to correct that too. All right, because it's a bootstrap class, its name should be matching, otherwise it's not gonna work. You can see that it's looking a lot better now. I go inside a single coach detail page, and there we are going to work further. So currently we have some designing issue as well, and as so I want to change the navigation color. So first correct that. So we go to header file where we have the navigation, and I'm going to change this BG primary to dark, and it's dark now. Now also want to give the margin, so margin bottom I give it, and now it's looking better. Now we're going to work on each coach, so we want to add a router link here. So I'm gonna create, because I want it inside here at the bottom where a user can click and go to the each user detail page, so that each coach use detail page. So here I say router national link, and here we need to pass the class of button, which is a bootstrap class again. So bdn info and margin top 2, and then I want to say okay to the one we click. So if I click on this coach Rogers, it should take the Rogers detail on the single page, or if I click on Albert, so Albert detail. So we need to get the ID dynamically in that case. So what we do here is, if you remember in the last video, we getting the coach ID here, and that's what we need to use. So we need to pass here the coach ID. So what are we going to do? We're going to put here something like this, slash coaches, and then slash, and this you put $sign and curly braces and the coach ID. This is how you can go to the each coach dynamically. So if I put here coach ID inside it for now to show you that we are getting it. So if you see here, you can see that we are getting these coach IDs here. Now instead of this coach ID, we want to say something else. Let's say hire today. All right, so we have info, it should be. All right, so let's see. Okay, we have the nice button here. So if we go to, you can see that here that we have the separate IDs. So if I go click here, we get the C102. If I go here, we get C103. All right. So now we need to work with the route, because we are going here, we have coaches slash ID. So if you go to the router.js, if you remember, we created this coaches with ID, and we don't have any component right now which is responsible for this one. So let's create. So we want to use this as a page, and it is going to be single page. So it's going to be what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a component in pages, coaches, and here it's going to be single coach component.view. All right, so this is going to be, it is now. Okay, and I want to show it if we have the coach. All right, so this div and data will show if we have the coach value set. So to set the coach value, what do we need to do? We need to open the script tag first of all. So I say here script we need to get the ID. So there is a way to get this ID as a prop. So what we actually do, we define that we want this ID as a prop. So here where we have router.js, if I say here that I want this ID as a prop, it is going to pass it. So here I say props and I say true. All right, so this ID is going to be passed as prop as well. Okay, so you just saying, okay, there is going to be an ID and I want that ID as a prop as well. So here, if I go to single coach here, now I can say, all right, we have props, and here I can mention ID. Now to see that it is working, I use the created, and inside created I say alert this.id. All right, so currently we need to call this inside here because we don't have it here. So import single coach from pages / coaches / view. Now to use it on that particular route, we are going to pass it right there. So we save this, and you can see that it gave us an alert with the ID. So refresh, we get the alert with the ID. So we go back here, all right, and refresh. So error goes away. Let's do something more logical than the getting the ID. So in this page, what we want to do, first I want to return the coach. If we don't have coach data, then it should be null by default, but we are going to get this data now. So to get the data, we're going to say here, we're going to use the Vuex. So we're going to say, all right, get us the data. So it's going to be this $store. Okay, and this time instead of getters, we want to set an action. Okay, so that action is going to get the data for a particular coach. So to do that, we use dispatch, and inside dispatch we are going to call first the namespace because we have this name defined here, and we have namespace set to true, so we can now call this namespace. So here I say coaches, and then I want to say get coaches. Okay, so it's get coaches. Now get coaches is going to be the action that we need to create. So I'm going to save this first, and I'm going to go into the file here, and here inside actions, constant actions, we need to create that. So how do we create it? So we create like function. It's going to get coaches simply, and inside it, first we are going to get the context. Okay, so this is the context, and then here we are going to get the response. So I say constant response is equal to fetch, and I want to pass a URL, and this URL is the URL from where we are going to get the data. Now what URL is it? Let me show you the URL. I'm just so this is the URL, and here I have some data already. So you can see that there we have about, age, first name, ID, last name, rate, and skills, which is an array. So this is for each coach. So if I expand all the data, you can see all the data is just like that. The ID, then this is for first name Roger, age 30, then about, then skills, Then we have Albert, A34, skills, and there is the ID. So that's how this data is, and we are getting it from this URL. So here I need to pass this URL. So I pass this URL, and when you pass URL and get data from the Firebase, you put .json at the end to get the data. So this is how you get it. Now you can also define the method how you want this data to get. Currently we are going to use the default, even if we the method, which method we are using, so it's going to be get. All right, so we want to run some code afterwards once we get the data. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put here a sync, and here then I'm going to put await. That means that, all right, once we have this data, then go and do further code. So this response is going to be dealt with afterwards once we have the response from here. So here what I'm going to do, I'm going to say, all right, we need to modify this data as we want it. So I'm going to create another constant here, and it's going to be response data, and I'm going to put it await response.json. all right, now here I'm going to create a constant, and constant going to be modified array. So it's going to be a modified data that we want. So whatever data comes, I want it in a format. So the format going to be, if I go to coaches here, it should be in this format, an array, and then the objects, and objects should have this value this way so that we can display them straight away. So for currently, if I go to our application, we have error here. Let's correct this. So here where we have this, what are we going to do? I'm going to say response data, so we can simply console log to see what we are getting. Okay, currently I'm not using context, so we are going to remove this, and I will be using it in a moment, because if I put context here and won't use here, it is going to give the error. Now another error we are getting, the modified data is assigned the value but never used. So modified data, let me comment this for now. Okay, so here, so let's see what we did. So front page, coach item, and if I go to coach item, we are dealing with single page, sorry about that, single coach. So when we create this, we are calling this store dispatch, and it goes to get coaches. Get coaches is inside the coaches, and here, and it is going to get the data. We're getting the data, we are seeing response, so we should get, so I go here, hire today, and we get the data here. All right, you can see that the data for each user, right? Now if you notice that we are not getting array of objects here, we are getting objects, object of objects. So we want to make it in a way so it should be just like this. It should be an array, then object. So what I'm going to do for that, we want to loop through this data. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say here for, and in for we're going to say a constant data in response data. All right, so this way you can loop through. Now you can see that what data is, so you can say console.log data. All right, so I'm going to remove this console log for now, and now if you see here, we get the ID for each data. That means the data is the ID, so we need to pass ID as a key like this. Now if you see, we get the object, each object, right? So we get the each object, so we can put the each object inside an array. So we have modified data here, and I will say here, okay, modified data dot push, and we can put this inside it. So what is going to happen? It is going to be an array of objects which we need. All right, so here we say console. Now if you go here, you will see that we have an array of objects. Great, that's what we need to show our data. Now here, now we need to use the context. So here, context, because if you won't use it, it is going to give the error. Now context dot commit, and here in a moment I will show you what exactly is happening here. Update coaches list. All right, and we pass modified data here. All right, so what we are doing basically, we are setting an action. So when page refreshes, this action fires, and this action goes to this get coaches. Now in your action file, you're getting the data from the Firebase, and then you're modifying the data in your action. So this get coaches is dealing with the modification of data, and then you're passing, you're saying, okay, we are getting in context.commit, and there you're saying update coaches list, which is going to be a mutation, and you're passing your data. So what we need to do now, we have mutations here at the bottom, and at this point we need to use this mutation. So all I'm gonna say is I'm going to copy this name and going to create just like function like this. Now we're going to get here state, the state, and the payload. Now here, all I want to say, because we have the access to state, we say state.coaches. All right, and we are going to say it is equal to payload. So if you see, we are just setting the coaches, this array, and we are setting it equal to this payload. Payload is the second argument, and if you see here, we have the first argument as a function name, and the second argument is the payload, and this is state that allowing us to access this. If we go to home page, and we see that we have 3 here, and when I go to single page and then I go to home page, you will see we have the all coaches coming from database. Now why this is happening, because when we were in single coach page, on refresh of this we call get coaches, and this get coaches, if we go to the get coaches here, it is fetching all the coaches and it is passing here, and that is getting set to this coaches, state coaches, and this coaches is something that we are fetching in the front page, but we want to show the single coach that we are on, the one we clicked on initially. So to do that, what we need to do, we need to go into the single coach page here where we see get coaches. Here we need to say display coaches. We need to call display coaches. So what we do, we simply say here this, and then $$ store dot, we're going to get a getter, and this time the getters we are going to say here coaches slash. So if I go to the getters here, so we have display coaches, so this is the getter we need to get. So here inside single, I'm going to call this getter, but this display coach is going to get all the coaches again. So for example, if I say here console.log and we refresh, I go to here, we get all three. So you can see here the first name is Roger, and this one is Albert. So these three are coming here. So we need to make sure, first of all, we're going to see that we only get the one we clicked on. So we don't want all. So to do that, what we need to do, we need to put a condition here. So for that, I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to say dot find, and we want to find a coach with the same ID. So we're gonna say, okay, look for coach dot ID, which is equal to this dot ID, and this dot ID is this ID, which is the prop we are getting. So it is going to get exactly the same coach we are looking for. Now we are setting a coach which is by default null, and currently we are not showing anything. So we can set this coach to the equal to this. So this dot coach equals this. All right. So we're going to get a single coach data, and that is going to go inside here, and then we can show that data here. So here I can say coach for now. So if I go here and go to home, refresh, we go to hire today, and we get the data of that particular coach. All right, so we can now modify and display it. So in single coach here, where I have this, I'm going to create div with the class of the contact page, and here I want div with the class of card. Now here we want to say details, and here I'm going to create a UL, and it's going to be list group again, and then li with list the details. So I'm going to use computer properties again to display let's say coach name, and then in parentheses I'm going to show coach age. All right, and it should be inside curly braces. So, and then we need another li for more details. Span. Again, we will be, I'm just going to pass the class for now. So it's going to be badge li. It's going to be charges. Coaching fee. All right, and then we want a router link, which is for the contact. So router dash link. All right, and I'm going to give it a class of bdn, and bdn. I want to set the to as well, so it's going to be where to send the user when user clicks here. So we're going to say coaches slash, we want to pass the ID, user ID, so coach ID, and then slash contact. If you notice, we already in coaches and ID, so we just want further one contact. So that's what it is going to do. So it is already having the coaches till ID, and it is going to add this slash coaches, and there we can add the user contact. So currently if we go and refresh, we get the errors, so many errors here, because we don't have these computer properties. So we need to set these properties now. So display coach name first of all, so let's do that. So here we say compute, and we want to return, or what we can do, we already defined these in coach item, I think, coach item. Yeah, we have it here. So what we want to do is simply copy these, because these are exactly the same way I'm doing here. It's the same way we will be doing here. So just like that. All right, comma. And now if I go to refresh, go to hire today, okay, we get first name undefined. Okay, we have coach data, so you need to replace with the coach, or we can call that coach, because it's not going to work. It's looking for coach data right now, so we need to say coach data here and coach data here. All right, now if I go to home, refresh, click, coach is not defined. Now where are we using coach? Okay, we are using coach here. Coach ID. All right, save, home, refresh. Okay, we are having coach here as well. All right, so we have the data. So the only thing we are not seeing right now is specialize in. So we're dealing with that. We have code skills, but I'm not looping through here. So we need to do that. So quickly, let's add that. So I say here v4, and also we need to pass the key. So for that, I'm going to use index. Now for index, we need to pass index. So I say here comma index. It should be around, and print the name inside this band. So here I say area. All right, so this should work just fine because this code skill is here that we're getting. So let's see what happens. I save this, go back, go to home, refresh, we go to hire today, and now we have the specialization for that particular coach.
And I'll go